Grandmama used to pray, oh Lord, please save them from the evil snares and all the dangers that entangle. Yea, though they walking through the valley of the shadows, just prepare and make them fit for every battle. Because I know they bound to come, and I know they bound to fall, but in your bounty, Lord, preserve their beautiful. Right, we still surviving off of grandma's prayers, surrounded by the jungle and the lion's den. Tread light, cause these traps is inconspicuous. They hide right in plain sight, thinking we don't see them when they linger. Look right beneath the surface, then leave a trail of corpses. Crisis, prices, your life a disposable commodity. Like living in this fantasy, conditioned to believe that the system even cares whether selling CDs or walking or driving or reading. Look, they don't even need a reason. It's just you breathing and being black. When it's such a pretty fall, it don't seem like we falling at all, at all. It's just a GMO dream, where things are never really what they seem. Please cue the violins, tell them just to play me something pretty, cause this gritty city got me screaming bloody murder. So they got me screaming. This gritty city got me on some. Look, get your hand up on my pocket. Distraction, so lazy they use the same tactics. Like condom with some trinkets, just don't let them get to thinking. That light bulb gets a blinking. You know niggas and ideas. Oh dear, my dear, you may not know me, but I know you very well. Foresight, they say hindsight is 20/20. Well, tell me something, we gotta see that history is on repeat. And maybe it takes a beat and a melody to speak a little louder than the message in the clouds or the essence in the air. I swear, my God is just so clear that a system driven by fear can never give us nothing but more of the same things. Oh, when it's such a pretty fall, it don't seem like we falling at all. It's just a GMO dream, where things are never really what they seem. Please cue the violins, tell them just to play me something pretty, cause this gritty city got me screaming. It's murder. Got me screaming, got me. This gritty city got me on some.
We might not be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I leave, you remember I said with the last words on my lips that I am a revolutionary. And you're gonna have to keep on saying that. You're gonna have to say that I am a proletarian. I am the people.
I need that Fred Douglas bro, motherfuckers with the muscles, no strength is in the digits. Quit spitting on the bungalow. The devil got a buzz stronger than a bumble nose. Lions and impalas and they creeping through the jungle slow. Warthog pull him over, but the tail light, heart beating fast, and he begging to the jail Christ. You know the one that brothers find in the slammer. Gotta do the running man if they ever find a hammer. Check the grammar. Kelsey ain't Frazier, sitting on the couch with his wrist near a razor. The hood could be good if we loved our neighbor, but the world is so cold, no gas in the pacer. Indiana in the temple of doom. No, the slum ain't plum, it resembles a broom. Crime on the regular, look at the goons, is what they do from the treetop, silver for the spoon. No regrets, bro, we do it for the. Don't flex, bro, we do it for the. No rest, bro, we do it for the. No need to guess, bro, we do it for the. No regrets, bro, we do it for the. Don't flex, bro, we do it for the. No rest, bro, we do it for the. No need to guess, bro, we do it for the.
Formerly my Malcolm Little, but grow up into my Malcolm Unknown. AP like Malcolm Middle, but figure how sun grown is more corner stores, corner pockets and blunt rolls. Get the rolling trips and you know the grip like run nose. Live from where they designated for us to be at, with designated drivers to stay behind on a G-Pack. Toss money with lost money, inspired feedback, and the light come with it, baby. You see that? See that? Be that like nobody ever was. They told us to get it forever on these forever runs. Said to never be done. The height of ambition is what you leak from, and suck all that away when you get it. Know who to keep from. I'm riding in Tommy Smith, John Carlos, but my jeans are still fit from John off of our dose, and I still do mean biz as far as bars go, and my roof is still nowhere near where my car go, for real.
No regrets, bro, we do it for the don't flex, bro, we do it for the no rest, bro, we do it for the no need to guess, bro, we do it for the no regrets, bro, we do it for the don't flex, bro, we do it for the no rest, bro, we do it for the no need to guess, bro, we do it for the
I'm not the pig. You got to make a distinction. The people are going to have to stand up against the pig. That's what the pastors are doing. That's what the pastors do it all over the world.
What's happening, good people? We are live and direct on this beautiful, beautiful Friday. It's a lot going on, as y'all already know. That was my folks a few seconds ago. People want to know who's rapping. It was Vintage Tux out of Florida, out of Tallahassee. You know what I mean? Real dope MCs. Today I wanted to talk about this thing that's going on all over the internet right now. You know, a lot of folks, particularly mercenary media, mainstream media, reporting that one of or more culprits have been talking about calling off this boycott as as we know they didn't start. As always, that's it's always usual suspects that come along. So in a tradition of Black Power media, we had to dig in the crates. We had to say, who started this boycott? And then we had to take it to all the way to the scene of the crime. You know what I mean? We had to take it to the area that's been in the news for quite a while right now around ICE. You know what I mean? Folks have been hearing a lot about it. We said, let's go get our sister, Nekima Levy Armstrong. For folks who aren't familiar with her, she's an award-winning civil rights attorney, activist, former president of the Minneapolis NAACP. She most recently made the news, bum rushing, as these white folks would say, the church. She went in there with, like Jesus, overturning the money changers, saying, this is corrupt, it's out of order. And, they ended up arresting her and a few of her comrades. Of course, we had Georgia Ford on some weeks ago, who was also arrested along with Don Lemon, the journalist. But, we've been hearing about her great work for a while. We said, it's a perfect time to come on, bring her on to talk about what's really hood. So today, we wanted to talk about the Negro attempt to hijack a movement, because Negro is always trying to hijack a movement. So without further ado, I ain't gonna talk y'all to death. I'm gonna bring on a good sister, Nekima. Nekima, what's happening? How you feeling?
Hey, I'm glad that we're having this opportunity to connect. Thank you for having me. No doubt, no doubt.
It's an honor to have you on. I appreciate the last minute. We've been playing internet tag for a couple of days. You know what I mean? But it's definitely good to have you on. Unfortunately, these particular circumstances, we always have the ground workers, and then we have what we call the important Negroes. And the important Negroes, they usually come along, they got a little bit more PR coverage, they got a machine behind them and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And they come along and as Malcolm talked about in one of his speeches, he was talking about how they wanted to try to stop the March on Washington. And the individual said, I can't stop it, boss. I didn't start it. But in this case, this cat said, yes, sir, master, we gonna stop it. We ain't started, but we gonna just do what we need to do. I'm in rare form today. Today's Friday. So, I just want y'all to know, some of y'all are like, man, Kalonji wildin'. That's how it's supposed to be. But anyway, for folks who aren't familiar, Nekima, I know that I want you to walk it back. Give us a historical breakdown on this this quote unquote Target boycott. Let's take it from there.
Well, thank you again for having me. Thank you everybody for tuning in. So I'm Nekima Levy Armstrong. I am a Minneapolis-based civil rights lawyer and activist. I actually grew up I was born in Jackson, Mississippi, but I grew up in South Central LA. So I've been around, this country and standing up for our people since as long as I can remember. That's why I became a lawyer, to stand up for Black folks after what I saw happening in LA, beating of Rodney King, the war on drugs, all of those things impacted me as a child and put that fire in my belly, to fight for our freedom and fight for justice for us. So it's with that backdrop and that understanding that I'll share how we got here regarding this Target boycott. So as you all may remember, in 2020, Minneapolis experienced an extreme situation when George Floyd was murdered by the Minneapolis Police Department. And of course, we had experienced other police killings before George Floyd, but there was something about the way in which George Floyd was killed, the fact that we saw over 9 minutes of him being suffocated under the knee of a white officer's neck, and the fact that we were in the middle of COVID. It caused people to stop, pay attention, take to the streets, and it became a worldwide outcry for justice. So in Minnesota, we're no strangers to various issues happening and us having to stand up, take to the streets, shut things down, and use our voices. That's just the culture. And you all just saw this with this recent ICE surge, where the federal government sent all of these ICE agents into Minnesota, and how we stood up and we fought back. So with that same energy, in January of 2025, we know that Donald Trump took his second term, or started his second term as president of the United States. And immediately he began writing executive orders attacking diversity, equity, inclusion, Black history, all kinds of things. Well, within that first week of Donald Trump getting into his second term of office, we suddenly in Minnesota started seeing headlines saying that one of our formerly beloved, and at the time it was beloved, hometown companies, Target Corporation, had put out a statement saying that they were going to roll back their focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. They had also been reporting some of the work that they had been accomplishing around different diversity measures on a regular basis. They said they would no longer report those things. So we interpreted as Target capitulating or bowing down to the Trump administration. Now, why this was so significant, it's a few different reasons. Number one, Target had made it its business to be a company that embraced diversity. If you ever went in there in February during Black History Month, you would see these beautiful displays, Black brands on the shelves. It made us feel welcome. It made us feel comfortable, but it also made us spend money, in Target. And so after George Floyd was killed, one of the things that's notable is the fact that Target was fully aware of everything that was happening. They have a store located right across the street from the 3rd Precinct Police Station. And that's the police station that housed the 4 officers who killed George Floyd, which was the site of huge demonstrations all that week. It got burned down by the end of that week. But people would run to Target when we were tear gassed, to try to get milk and other supplies. And sometimes the staff would lock the doors and not even let people in to get basic supplies to take care of themselves. So Target was aware of all the uprising, the turmoil, everything that happened. And in 2021, as we were continuing to fight for justice for George Floyd, in the midst of the Chauvin trial, Target put out a pledge, right? They actually emerged as a leader for racial equity during that time, because they said, look, we are pledging $2.1 billion. And they had 4 different things that they wanted to accomplish related to the Black community. They said, number one, we're going to improve the Black customer shopping experience. Number 2, we're going to improve our hiring and promotion practices for Black employees. Number 3, we're going to put more Black brands on the shelves. And number 4, we're going to improve our supplier diversity networks. So we all were ecstatic to see Target helping to lead the charge around what we felt could have been a racial reckoning during that time. So it was a shock in January of 2025 when Target suddenly did an about face and aligned itself with the cruelty of the Trump administration, which is trying to take us back to the time, before Jim Crow, as far as I'm concerned. And so one of my comrades, Monique Cullors Doty, who is also, she's the co-founder of Black Lives Matter Minnesota. She's also a co-founder of the National Target Boycott. She's the first person who reached out to me. And she said, Nekima, have you seen this? And I looked at the press statement from Target and I couldn't believe it. And so the next morning, this was on a Friday, the next morning, that Saturday, I took to Facebook to talk to my network. And I said, have you all seen this, regarding Target? Because everybody knows Target, in Minnesota. It just has that reputation. And I said, what steps are we going to take to hold this company accountable? For them to back away from diversity, equity, and inclusion, to capitulate to the Trump administration, that is not acceptable. So people in my comments started saying, we're going to cut up our red cards. We're not going to shop there anymore. There was a sister named Leslie Taylor who said, why don't we do some kind of blackout? And I said, I love that idea. I said, but let's do a boycott, right? Because that's what I was more familiar with, doing a boycott. So I went back to Monique, and then also another one of my comrades, Jaylani Hussein, who is the third co-founder of the National Target Boycott. And he's also the executive director of CARE Minnesota. We've all been on the front lines for a long time in Minnesota around civil rights and police accountability issues. So I said to them, why don't we take action around Target? Let's do a national boycott. They were all, of course, they were in agreement because they were thinking the same thing. And so we started planning and strategizing. And the first thing we said we were going to do was put a press release together. So we put a comprehensive press release together. We talked about Target's history. We talked about a sense of betrayal with Target making the decision to align itself with the Trump administration, which was an authoritarian regime. We talked about our civil rights and how this boycott that we were launching connected to our civil rights history. And we put that press release out there. And our plan was we put it out there around January 28th of 2025. On January 30th was our actual press conference. We wanted to make sure that we held the press conference outside of Target's corporate headquarters, which is right in downtown Minneapolis. And we wanted to do it before February 1st, which was the official start of the boycott, to coincide with the start of Black History Month. So we invited people, come stand with us. We're going to announce this boycott. And that's what we did. So people showed up. One of my other comrades, she took a Target red card that somebody brought. She cut it up, during the press conference. So it was dramatic, in terms of us letting Target know and letting the world know that we were not going to sit on the sidelines as they made this decision to retreat from diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think the other thing that's important for people to understand is the fact that Target was seen as such a liberal, progressive, and equity embracing company, that if Target was so quick to fold under Donald Trump's political pressure, that would have given every company in America permission to do the same thing. But because we challenged Target, what did we see happening? Several companies coming out of the woodworks, doubling down on their commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion as they saw the boycott launched and beginning to work. We also saw, after we launched the boycott, other boycotts that emerged, like the Latino freeze, the Tesla takedown, the rolling national boycotts, and then ultimately the 40-day Target fast, which was launched by Pastor Jamal Bryant. So all that being said, that's the origin of how we got started. And people were excited, like we're doing this, and they were, and I have a lot of white progressive folks in my network too. So they were I cut up my red card. I wrote a letter to the CEO. Like they got into it. So in between that time, we were contacted by, I have a, you know, I was a law professor for 14 years. And one of my law students is also an activist. And she was also friends with Tamika Mallory. Now, I knew Tamika Mallory, first met her in 2017. And then in 2020, after George Floyd was killed, she showed up here and was a part of a press conference that we held. And so, you know, we were acquaintances. I don't consider us friends, but we were acquaintances. So my former law student reached out and said, Tamika wants to connect with you regarding Target, to know, you know, what all are you guys going to do, and how can they support your efforts? And she's going to pull together some other national folks for, you know, this conversation, or to build a coalition. And so at that point, I sent my former law student our press release that laid out everything, and then the meeting was set. So I come to the virtual meeting, you know, and at the meeting was Tamika Mallory, who was the orchestrator of this group, Nina Turner, who I had never met, Pastor Jamal Bryant, who I had never met, another pastor, Stephen Green, who I had met back in 2015 when a young Black man was killed. I was helping to lead something. He came here for that. And then there were a couple of other young Black ministers who I didn't know. And then Linda Sarsar was there, who also worked with Tamika when she was one of the leaders of the Women's March, you know, which was this national coalition that had formed several years ago, but I don't know if they're still operating. I think they're still operating. So Linda Sarsar, a Muslim woman, you know, was also a part of it. So as we're meeting, you know, they had our press release through my former law student. And the first thing Tamika Mallory said was, "Thank you for your clarity," because we laid out the entire situation, like the blueprint for the rationale behind boycotting Target and why it was so important to our community. And so I let them know, you know, we had a conversation about it. I think at that time, Jamal Bryant was on the fence, you know, regarding the boycott and, you know, what he wanted to do. And I basically made the case like, well, we're going to do the boycott. Like, you know, it didn't matter to us whether any of them did what they did or not. I think Nina Turner, through her organization, had put some graphics out online about a boycott. But we were determined that, look, Target is a Minnesota-based company. We are going to hold them accountable after what we have been through. And so, you know, I told them, look, our press conference is coming up in a couple days, you know, feel free to tune in, and got off the phone with them and left it at that. That night, so we had our press conference, which I referenced earlier. That night, the first thing I saw was Nina Turner on Roland Martin's show. And as she's on Roland Martin's show, she's talking about this boycott. And I was surprised, because when we had met as a group, they never mentioned this is going to be our strategy, what we're going to do to support y'all. But it really wasn't about us. But she went on Roland Martin's show.
But it wasn't sanctioned. This was something.
No, this was just her doing her. So she went on Roland Martin's show. She started talking about her organization and, you know, them launching a boycott. And then she said, we have activists on the ground in Minneapolis. And I'm listening, like, is she talking about us? Because we weren't her activists on the ground. Like, we are autonomous in what we do. We have a long track record of fighting for us and successes, and we're nobody's activists on the ground. So that was the first thing that was a little strange. But I'm like, you know, maybe I just let it go and kept moving. Yeah. So then the next thing that happens, maybe within a week or two of that, I get a call from Tamika Mallory. I think I had probably met with this group another time. I can't recall, but I know that Tamika Mallory called me offline. And the reason she called me was to let me know that Jamal Bryant had launched a targetfast.org website, and that he was going to do a 40-day Target fast. And I was like, a 40-day Target fast? And I was like, why would he launch a Target fast when there's already a nationwide Target boycott underway? I said, I feel like that's going to cause confusion. I said, and what is the difference between a boycott and a fast? She's like, well, I'm not sure. Just, with Lent coming, he wants to get the faith community involved. So he's going to launch this Target fast, situation. I'm like, okay. I'm like, it's strange to me. And then she asked me, what were our demands? I told her our demands for the Target boycott, which were also in the press release that had been shared with them. And they took 2 of our demands and added them to Jamal's website. Now, I waited a couple days to even look at the website with what I had going on. So I looked at their website. And one of the first things I see is that it looks like this Target fast situation, which was going to start on March 5th. So over a month after our boycott began, it made no mention that there was already a national Target boycott underway. Nor was our community mentioned, even though Target is headquartered here. And then I saw a picture of Kirk Franklin. And I'm like, what does Kirk Franklin have to do with a Target fast? It was just weird. I didn't understand.
Stomping out Target. What's going on?
Right. Like, what's happening here? So when I saw this, I was flabbergasted. And I got in the little text group with them. And I said, can somebody help me understand what's happening here? I said, because this feels like the co-opting this boycott. And I said, why is there this targetfast.org, website? Why isn't our community mentioned? I'm like, we've been through a lot. Like, this is serious for us, and I'm like, and there's already a national Target boycott going on. I said, I think this will confuse the community. I said, so help me understand this. And so nobody responds for a minute. And then Tamika suddenly responds saying she's on a flight and she'll respond, once she lands and all that. And she's like, so Jamal, can you respond? Because it was his website, right? And he didn't really have a response, but like, okay, whatever. Kind of like brushing me off. And then a day or two later, it doesn't get resolved, but a day or two later, Tamika Mallory goes on the Breakfast Club. Now, she's supposed to be on the Breakfast Club promoting her book that had just come out, but she spends 70 to 85% of the interview talking about the Target boycott, which was strange to me, right? Because y'all are supposed to be amplifying our efforts. Why is this the whole substance of your interview with the Breakfast Club? But it was.
So she was flying to the Breakfast Club? Was the flight going to the Breakfast Club?
No. On the Breakfast Club, she references having gone to New Birth, which is the church that Jamal oversees in Atlanta, to sell her books. So when I heard all of that, it definitely gave me pause, because I'm thinking, no wonder you didn't hold Jamal accountable, and you did his bidding by calling me on the side about this Target fast stuff because of your own personal gain. That's how I felt. That he gave you, because it's a mega church, he gave you this access to come sell your books. So you're not willing to stand up, in a moment like this. So that was definitely disconcerting to me. And then after that, you start seeing Jamal go on Roland Martin. Then he went on the Breakfast Club. Then he went on CNN. And I found out that he had a publicist that was intentionally booking him for all of these media shows in order to position himself as the leader of the national Target boycott. Because for some people, what they heard from him was what they thought it was, even as everybody's participating in the boycott. And it was intentional. At that point, it was so disconcerting, because I'm thinking, as Black women, 2 of the 3 of us are Black women who literally, genuinely labor on behalf of our community. And to have a man who, because he has a bigger platform, a bigger following, jump out in front, which was just strange. And I also did not trust him. I didn't know him like that. To think this is the danger of someone, positioning themselves as a civil rights leader on behalf of our community. But what are they going to do when they get to the negotiating table? That was in the back of my mind. Like, this just feels really dangerous to me. And so after bringing my concerns to them again, and I, cooperated, tried to help with different things, because Jamal asked for, his demand started, increasing. Like, for example, he's like, can I have a list of some of the pastors in Minnesota So my law student and I gave him a list of people. Then he says, oh, I want to come to Minnesota and do a press conference. And I'm just like where is that? Like, it just started looking more and more like co-opting. And so I raised these concerns to this group, and they just gaslit me at the, like, I was tripping, saying that they were working to co-opt this boycott. And me and my people, we kept working. I felt bad. My other co-founders, they weren't in these conversations. I would relay things to them, and they had a lot of skepticism around whether I could trust these people. And I'm like, you know, I'm doing my best to try to hold them accountable, get some answers, but we just kept going. And so at one point, my former law student, when she could see finally what was happening, she got in the group chat with these guys, and I was in there. And she basically said, you know, what is happening is unacceptable. This is very disrespectful to the Minnesota organizers. You know, basically, you guys are trying to co-opt this boycott, and I'm not going to be a part of this. And she got out of the group chat. Now, mind you, she had been friends with Nekima Levy for years. She got out of the group chat after she saw what was happening. So I waited in the group chat for 2 or 3 hours because I wanted to see, are any of them going to respond to her concerns and address this? Radio silence. So finally, I respond, and I said, this person is right. You know, you guys are trying to co-opt this boycott. I raised these concerns. I was gaslit, you know, this and that. As soon as I said something, Nekima Levy calls me. I do not answer my phone. Then Nina Turner calls me. I do not answer my phone. And I said, I know you guys are trying to call me, but I'm not comfortable taking your call offline. Because I felt like that's how the other situation happened with, you know, the Target fast just coming out of nowhere. Excuse me. And so I said, whatever we need to address, let's address here in openness and transparency, so everybody is on the same page about what's going on. Tamika got upset that I wouldn't take her call, got an attitude, and got out of the group chat, right? Which was fine with me. And then I, you know, went back in with a few of them, like, this is unacceptable, you know, and I just laid it out. I'm like, you guys have no integrity, you know, to do this, you know, after what our community has been through. Like, it was really hurtful. And so, so then at that point, I got out of the group chat. The next thing you know, Tamika sets up another group chat and brings back my former law student into the chat. And it was really going nowhere. I mean, Jamal's response was, well, basically trying to make it seem like two women getting into it, when his actions were at the root of what was actually going on. And no one in that group chat stood up in defense of me and my law student, my former law student, or Minnesota. They were all complicit in that situation. So I left the group chat and distanced myself from them, distanced the national Target boycott from them. And then just, you know, we continue doing our organizing, you know, which included demonstrations inside of Target, thousands of people in a march outside of Target, writing op-eds, you know, just doing what we could, and on social media, you know, continuing to remind the people, continue to boycott Target. So, and as we're still doing all this, every now and then I would take an interview, did a CNN interview with Laura Coates, and they said they wanted me to talk about the Target boycott. Well, as soon as I'm on, they show a clip of Jamal Bryant talking. And then they were like, can you respond to this? And it had leader of the national Target boycott and under the caption of a video of him speaking. And then they asked me to respond. I'm just flabbergasted because I thought they knew, you know, like, why would you bring me on here to respond to somebody co-opting our work? And so I wound up having a like an honest conversation on live air on CNN with Laura Coates, you know, just saying, look, I don't trust anything that comes out of that man's mouth. And I was like, he's not the leader of the national Target boycott. And I broke down, you know, what happened and why. But we had different moments like that where we had to deal with the media that would run with this celebrity pastor's, you know, statements and words. And from my perspective, a lot of what he was saying and doing wasn't grounded. You know,
how long ago was this CNN interview?
The CNN interview was sometime probably like last summer or early fall.
Okay, and this didn't stop him. They just kept on moving.
It did not. No, it definitely didn't stop him. If anything, he kept doing all the things. I mean, so it's a couple other points I want to bring up around this. Yeah. So like in May, you know, in our press release I mentioned, we talked about George Floyd and Target making, you know, these announcements in the aftermath of George Floyd, which of course we all fought hard for justice, like real actual labor, right? Mm-hmm. Fighting for justice for George Floyd. The next thing you know, when the George Floyd 5th year anniversary comes around, Jamal Bryant is doing interviews referencing George Floyd or doing demonstrations. And I'm like, you have no connection to George Floyd or the city of Minneapolis. Why are you even co-opting our talking points about a real thing that we experienced here and using them as leverage to continue to try to add to your credibility as the leader of the national Target boycott? So it would be tactics like that happen. And then you fast forward to, I want to say maybe July or August, headlines came out saying that Reverend Al Sharpton had met with the CEO of Target. And when we saw this, we were like, what? Because first of all, Target's headquartered here. They know who we are. We're right here. Why would you go meet with a civil rights leader in New York that has absolutely nothing to do with the boycott? So we realized
CEO went to New York.
He went to New York. And so at the time, you know, I wrote about it on social media, like, this is the erasure of Black women. And I said, you know, to have corporations trying to choose our leaders, you know, that it rubbed me the wrong way to see that. It was like, what are y'all doing? Like, it showed me this further nasty side of Target, because this is what's happened historically, right? Where they try to plant Black leaders or choose their Black leaders or buy off Black leaders to control what happens in Black America. And I felt like this was symbolic of that. Not saying that's what happened. I'm just saying the optics was symbolic of that to me. And so I wrote about it and put up, you know, an article that showed the picture of Reverend Al Sharpton, the CEO of Target, and then two of Reverend Al's staff from NAN in the picture. So later in January of this year, as this ICE surge was going on, we found out directly from Reverend Al what really happened, because you know, we were involved in this fight, you know, around ICE getting out of Minnesota, right? And trying to call out the Trump administration. Like you mentioned, both Monique and I were involved in that city's church protest, Georgia Ford, Don Lemon, and 35 other people. So it was 39 of us have been indicted by the federal government for that particular protest. But in the midst of all of that, we actually, one thing that's interesting about the whole ICE surge is the fact that as Black leaders in Minnesota, because of all of our years of taking on the government, taking on law enforcement, you know, having to craft messaging, we were able to add a civil rights framework to that entire issue. And this was the first time in a jurisdiction where ICE was out there that you saw Black leaders who weren't elected officials able to lead on these issues, right? And help people understand how to fight, you know, on that level. And so through that experience, that opened the door for civil rights leaders outside of our state to want to come to our state. One of those people was Reverend Al Sharpton, who had been there before. He had been there. He preached George Floyd's funeral, Amir Locke's funeral, Dante Wright's funeral, people who had been killed by police. But he never really formed a connection with local organizers. And so I got a call from someone in the community saying Reverend Al wants to come to Minnesota as this ICE surge was happening. And I said no. And I gave the reasons. I was like, no. I said, because why would he go meet with the CEO of Target when we have an active boycott going on? I said, that just caused confusion. He shouldn't have been in a photo op with that man. I was like, it wasn't acceptable to me. So I was like, no. And so we wound up doing a press release for the ICE issues. And then in our press release, we had a section in there We are asking national civil rights leaders, do not come to Minnesota unless we invite you. And we talked about the reasons, because we're tired of people co-opting, you know, drowning out our voices when we're the ones on the ground, whether there's cameras or not, you know, doing the work for our people. And that's why people, you know, were shocked to see Minnesota rising up, because we've been on the ground for over a decade doing this work, but we're also low key. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're not out there chasing a spotlight. We just boots on the ground doing our work. But we were tired of these national people coming for whatever their agenda was. And so we said no to that. So I also at the press conference, I said, Reverend Al, Jamal Bryant, Tamika Mallory, you are not welcome in Minnesota. Unless we invite you here, do not come here. And so like we put the gloves on at that point, or took them off, however you would say it. So then what happened that night, I got a text message from someone in Reverend Al Sharpton's camp saying that Reverend Al wanted to talk to me. And so I talked to that person first and let them know why we said that we didn't want Reverend Al or any of the other national civil rights leaders to come to Minnesota. And then and I explained about the Target boycott situation and how disrespectful that was. And so, you know, that person said, you know, there's another part of this that happened, blah, blah, blah. So he puts Reverend Al Sharpton on the phone with me. And we have an honest conversation about all of this. And he apologizes to me for what happened. And he said that when Target CEO reached out to him, he said to the CEO, I will only meet with you if you come to New York, number one. Number two, only if the organizers are there as well. So who did he call? Jamal Bryant. Who wasn't in that picture, but who was at that meeting? Jamal Bryant.
Wow.
And so
he was there, but he didn't get in the picture.
He was there. He intentionally didn't get in the picture because he didn't want Nina Turner and Tamika Mallory to know he had met with Target without them. And so Reverend Al tells us, you know, tells me point blank, like, this is what happened. And so I accept his apology. I thank him for letting me know what really went on. And then we arranged for him to also, excuse me, talk to the other co-leaders, co-founders of the Target boycott. So the next morning we did a Zoom call with Reverend Al, and they got to hear from him as well. You know, and he got to hear from them, and he apologized to them too. And then he said, I'm going to apologize on my show, which he did. He had Ben Crump, you know, who's a friend. He had him on his show, and on that show, he apologized in January of 2026 to us as Minnesota organizers of the Target boycott. So I accept Reverend Al's apology. I appreciate him owning up to it and him acknowledging to us how basically Jamal Bryant did him dirty, because he didn't tell him that we were the organizers, even though he knew. He acted like he was. And so all that happened. And then the other thing that happened around all of this is, of course, what we all saw this past week, because we haven't had any contact with these people since I cut ties and distanced us and our boycott. We just let them do what they do. And so this week, as the world watched, Jamal Bryant, Nina Turner, and Tamika Mallory went to the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., and held a press conference. And essentially, their focus was on saying that there was an end, that the Target boycott was over. And apparently, that was Jamal Bryant's message. And I don't understand. I'm still flabbergasted as to why, when we're winning, right? There's been so many successes with this boycott. Our community has been united around this boycott. We've had a lot of white progressive women aligned with us around this boycott. And it has led to an ouster of the CEO from that position, him losing millions in compensation, declining stock prices, months of declining foot traffic in the store, declining revenues and sales, and Target trying all these shenanigans to win their customers back. That is success, right? So in the height of the success of the Target boycott, You have someone who has tried to co-opt this movement, positioning themselves as a leader, knowing full well what they're doing, now trying to speak for Black America, claiming that the Target boycott has ended. And the way that I found out was a breaking news email from our hometown paper, the Star Tribune, saying Target boycott is over. And I'm like, what? And I click on the link. What do I see? This story about Jamal Bryant calling this press conference. Then they mention us in passing, a trio of local organizers, blah, blah, blah. Right? This is our hometown paper, disrespecting us for a white-led corporation that has disrespected our people. And then I see a picture, and the picture is of my daughter, my 8-year-old daughter, holding, her name is Asada, 8 years old. She showed up with us. We pulled her out of school when we called the first press conference announcing the boycott in January of 2025. My daughter's holding one of our signs that says National Target Boycott. In the picture,
this is the picture.
Huh?
Wow. So this is
from the Star Tribune. My daughter is in the picture of our press conference in front of Target headquarters, not whatever Jamal Bryant had going on in Washington. So you take evidence of our work that we did this, and you use it to justify a false headline claiming that the boycott is over. So, of course, I had to deal with our hometown paper. I reached out to the CEO. I am disgusted. And I laid it out, and to use a picture of my daughter, this is unacceptable. Then I went on Facebook and let my network know. This headline ran. They used this picture of my daughter. This boycott is not over. And I just laid it out for our people, in Minnesota to understand what happened. And then I called the reporter. She called me back. I let her have it. How dare you? You knew since last year, number one, that we launched this boycott and that it was national from the beginning. Number two, you use a picture of my daughter to justify a false story. Number three, you amplify people who don't even live here, where Target is actually headquartered, and use what they said as the truth and didn't reach out to me. And apparently she claims she reached out within 20, 30 minutes. But I'm like, the breaking news story was already out there when you reached out to me. And then they tried to say, well, we'll change the story and get a quote. I didn't even respond to that. It's like, no, you already wrote what you wanted to write. Why? Because they are in collusion, as far as I'm concerned, in reinforcing white supremacy and alignment with empire, which is the Trump administration. Because we announced the boycott, there was no breaking news flash.
Right.
We had to fight for every bit of news coverage that we got about the boycott to help amplify the story.
So these slime buckets went to the National Press Club. They decide that they're going to do a press conference. And for folks who aren't aware, Jamal Bryant is pastor here in Atlanta at New Birth Church. He took over Bishop Eddie Long's position. And, it's the same guy that during COVID, April 2020, he had offered 1,000 COVID-19 tests to quote unquote minorities for $150 each. So he had a situation at the church where you can drive up, get this COVID shot for $150. This was April of 2020, and we have, the flyers and all that. So it's not something that, no conspiracy theory. I'm listening to you.
That's crazy. Well, you know what we were doing in April of 2020? Showing up in the parking lot of the local grocery store in the Black community, handing out cloth masks to our people. Every week, we out there because we like the government is not going to protect our people. That's why when George Floyd happened, that's why we were able to call that the first protest in the country. That we planned in the middle of the night after George Floyd was killed. That's why you saw Minnesotans outside with masks on, because we had already been outside, making sure that our community was supported for free.
Speaking of George Floyd, on the back of your wall, I see Breonna Taylor. Today is the 6-year commemoration of her murder in Louisville, Kentucky. You know what I mean? She was murdered in her home. For the listeners, today marks 6 years. So I don't want to forget her. But I want to, because it's so much to unpack, and I know you got things to do, and I'm glad that you came on. First off, when it comes to Target itself, right? The whole logo is not a euphemism. So I need folks to understand that. In 2003, Target built a state-of-the-art crime lab, or they had built state-of-the-art crime labs. And they actually became a leader in surveillance. They opened their labs up to the FBI, CIA, NSA, and even ICE.
And local police. Local police departments too.
Absolutely, absolutely. So they have this serious facial recognition situation. If you ever been to Target, they have files on you, your children, where you check out, the whole nine. So that's how sophisticated their particular system is. So the Target has been a government operation. It's not new to just, with what's going on with ICE. So I want to point that out. Secondly, indeed, we salute you all for your efforts on this. And in my opinion, there should never be an end to the boycott. You know what I'm saying? Especially because if they mistreated you and disrespected you and disregarded you at any point, we got to shut them down. That's that. But when it comes to these slimy folks like Jamal Bryant, and I'm saying slimy because I know that some of you may be parishioners in this church, and I don't really care. You know what I'm saying? I know this slimy dude personally. You know what I'm saying? We know the work he do, and we know the work that he hasn't done. He doesn't have a foothold here in Atlanta, so let alone Minneapolis. So, the fact that you got, this thing pops up, the Nina Turner situation, Tamika Mallory, Jamal Bryant. Have you heard from these folks since this press conference, or have they tried to contact you? Because I've seen everywhere I look, every major news source, they're talking about how Target has, the boycott has been stopped, which is very interesting because you never hear about an end to a boycott from a grassroots level. And the fact that they went to the National Press Club, the fact that neither one of them live in DC, and they actually spent money to fly or however they got there to hold this press conference, and it's showing up everywhere, all over the place, it's proof positive there's a machine behind it. What are your thoughts on that? Because of the fact that I know that with the press conference you all put together, it took work to even get around through the internet, etc. So what's your thoughts on this? Do you think that this is it's a corporate move? Do you feel like they took this check? I mean, I'm still trying to figure out how you stop something you ain't start.
100%. I mean, it honestly blows my mind. The audacity of them throughout the whole year. You got to think too. These people won. They were honored through the Route 100 for the Target boycott.
Right.
They got Jamal Bryant received an NAACP Image Award recently for the Target boycott. Right, and these are Black, entities that people look to, right? That either didn't do their homework or didn't care. And so when I think about them going to the National Press Club, I don't think that was a coincidence or random. From my understanding, they sent out an embargoed press release. So they wanted to make sure that the press didn't leak that this announcement was going to happen before they put it out. And think about the fact that of all the news coverage, I mean, where do you, like you said, for there to be all this news coverage for a so-called end to a boycott, and think about the fact that most media tried to ignore and downplay the effects of the boycott over the last year. When they, even the Star Tribune, when they would write articles, like let's say that Target had to lay people off, or they couldn't fill positions, or they closed stores, or declining foot traffic. They tried to attribute everything under the sun except for the boycott to these things. So I would contact reporters, or I would, write my own commentary on social media. I want y'all to look at this. This is a direct effect of the boycott that they don't want to acknowledge. So if the boycott wasn't working, it was enough for a lot of media to ignore. why suddenly is it in headlines everywhere?
Everywhere. Wall Street Journal.
That shows you it's like a conspiracy. I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist, but I mean, how else can you explain, you know, the fact that they suddenly saw it as being big enough or important enough to announce? They didn't announce the end of the Tesla takedown. They didn't announce the end of the rolling economic boycotts or the Latino freeze. So why would they announce something that has unified so many people in Black America? Confusing. Right? So there's something there. And I don't know what, you know, Jamal claims, you know, from my understanding that he wasn't paid. I don't know. I just know that over the summer, we found out that the National Baptist Convention, so it's the Black Baptist Convention, received $300,000 from Target. And myself and the other two co-founders drafted a letter to the president of the National Baptist Convention, asking them to return the money, saying, look, we're in the middle of a boycott against this company. We are from Minneapolis, where Target is headquartered. This is the harm that they have caused. And even what you talked about specifically with regard to Target's sophisticated surveillance system, it goes even deeper than that in terms of their cooperation with the Hennepin County Attorney's Office and their involvement in a number of young Black men being incarcerated in Hennepin County, because they contributed money to that office when Amy Klobuchar, who is now a senator in Congress, who's running for governor of Minnesota, when she was the county attorney, Target said they gave her money for that office and said, we don't just want arrests, we want convictions. Right. And also when Mike Freeman was the county attorney. So there's a young man named Mahdi Ali, who I wrote about, you know, in this letter we sent to the National Baptist Convention saying, look, in addition to Target capitulating to Donald Trump, rolling back DEI and all these other things, this is the harm they've caused to Black people on the criminal justice front in Hennepin County, Minnesota. And how there is a young man right now who went into prison as a teenager named Mahdi Ali for 2 murders he did not commit. And during his trial, Target sent 2 forensic analysts who worked for Target to come and testify at this boy's trial. He was a young immigrant without a lot of family support, got railroaded, and is still in prison to this day as a 30-something-year-old man. As far as I'm concerned, that's something that Target needs to proactively address. His case and the cases of other people who have been wrongfully convicted because of Target's funding of the Hennepin County Attorney's Office. So like I said, when we called this boycott, it was serious for us in our community, not just something you can just, you know, end at a national press club.
Right. You're checking out Black Power Media, RSTV on Black Power Media. We're joined by attorney activist Nekima Levy Armstrong. And she's setting it off over here. You know what I'm saying? She got it blazing over here. She's burning it down. I'm speaking of, you mentioned Washington, you mentioned photos, right? The White House, for some reason they was feeling you. You know, I looked online, I saw Nekima Levy Armstrong crying, being marched through the joint. I'm like, that don't look like the sister that we know that's been tearing it up. They had you on the joint looking like, mama. I'm like, what's going on? I mean, like, come to find out they doctored the photo. Can you tell us about that?
Of course they doctored the photo.
The White House, tell us about this.
The White House doctored my photo. So we talked earlier about the City's Church protest that we held. And they know that I'm one of the organizers of that City's Church protest. So I became a target of MAGA, you know, death threats, all kinds of things after that. And of course, Kristi Noem, you know, going online, putting my picture up, all kinds of crazy things that happened after that. So right away that evening, once the video started going viral about this church protest, the White House issued a statement, or, you know, somebody in the Trump administration, Kristi Noem and all them, when she was Department of Homeland Security Secretary, put out a statement saying that the Department of Justice was going to investigate the church protests. Now I'm thinking, y'all let the killer of Renee Good go free. You won't investigate him. You won't arrest him for shooting a woman 3 times, right in the face and her body, for being a peaceful observer of their actions. But you want to immediately investigate 39 nonviolent church protesters. And so that became the headlines that night. And so the next day, I started getting texts from the media saying that Kristi Noem had written on X and had gone to shows saying arrests are imminent, of these church protesters. So I was like, I know they're probably trying to find me, right? Looking for me. And so I wound up going to a hotel not too far from my house, but 8 minutes from the federal courthouse, because I said, if they have an arrest warrant for me, I want to turn myself in with my attorney. So I went 8 minutes from the courthouse, myself and 3 of my friends, who each had rooms on the side of my room at the hotel. And so the next morning, my lawyer called the U.S. Marshals to see if there was an arrest warrant for me. They said no. He called the U.S. Attorney's Office multiple times. They wouldn't give him any information. And so by that night, they were coming around the hotel. And apparently they set up a full surveillance operation at the hotel and around the hotel. They had federal agents apparently in a hotel room across the hall from mine. At some point in the middle of the night, they had set up over there. And one of my friends was in my room, and she said she was going to her room to take a bag. And I was surprised that she was going to leave the room. She was like, yeah, I'm going to take a bag to my room. And I'm like, okay. So I stood up, behind her. She opened the door to my room. As soon as she opened the door to my room, the door to the room across the hall from mine opened. And a white man looked at me and ran after her because she had started walking next door to her room. So he looked at me in the face and ran after her, tackled her to the ground, didn't say freeze, didn't say you under arrest, tackled her to the ground and handcuffed her, basically was very physical with her, took her downstairs, put her in a car, banged her head up on purpose. And when they took her, I said to my other friend, why would they do that? They think she's me. I just knew in my spirit that they attacked her because they thought she was me. Wow. And so turns out because I closed the door. When I saw that man run, I was like, I closed the door. And so when they took her, she said, let me see an arrest warrant. And they showed her an arrest warrant with my name on it. Now, mind you, she's like 2 or 3 inches shorter than me. We don't look alike other than being dark-skinned Black women. And the man looked at me and didn't know it was me. I have no explanation other than just ignorance. So they showed her.
So, all Black folks look alike.
Exactly.
Who thought I was you? Yeah.
Exactly. So basically they took her to the Whipple building, which is the federal building. She kept telling them I'm not Nekima. They didn't believe her. They ran her driver's license, saw she wasn't me. And they were pissed off. So they were ready to do a perp walk and all kind of stuff, thinking it was me. And so I called my lawyers like in the middle of the night. I'm like, look, can y'all get here as soon as possible? Because I don't trust them. I heard them, attacking her. I'm like, I don't trust them. I still have part of a brain tumor in my brain, so I was like, So my lawyer and my lawyers and my husband got to the hotel like about 7-something that morning. And before I opened the door to my hotel room, I could hear the FBI agents being aggressive towards my husband and the lawyers, like really, really aggressive. And in my spirit, I was like, that's my cue. So I opened the door and I'm like, hello, and they're like, are you Nekima Levy Armstrong? And I said, yes. And they were about to try to put me under arrest. And I said, hold on. And I'm like, before you handcuff me, and I laid out, I'm like, this is what you did to my friend because you thought she was me. And I said, I do not want you to manhandling me, being physical with me. I have part of a brain tumor in my brain. No. And they were like, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to. So they handcuffed me. And guess what? Just how I am with you now, That's how I was with them. Calm, cool, and collected. No tears. Strength and spirit of my ancestors and the Black women who came before me. I'm like, bring it at this point. Wow. You know, and so they handcuffed me. They couldn't break me. So the White House puts out an image of me, like you said, with crocodile tears, my hair disheveled. They darken my skin. I'm already a dark-skinned Black woman, but they darken my skin and exaggerated my features like they've done in the past, trying to, you know, make us symbol. And so, and I didn't even know that this happened until later that night, because what happened was they arrested me, and then a few minutes later, they arrested one of my friends, and they arrested one other person who was a white man, the woke farmer. And we had our court appearance. And at the court appearance, the judge said we could be released with no bond. And also, we didn't have to be detained. After the judge made that ruling, the federal government made an appeal for saying they wanted a hearing on us being whether we needed to be detained. And so the judge, because he was a magistrate judge and there's a level above him, said, I'll give you 1 hour to submit your paperwork regarding this detainment. And within that hour, you know what they did? They locked the doors to the federal courthouse. So they locked our lawyers out of the courthouse, which meant that we didn't get to have that second hearing. And then they put us in three sets of shackles and transported us to jail. And so and we were strip searched, you know, put on these jail uniforms. It felt like enslavement, right? Having belly chain, ankles, shackles on my ankles, and then having these handcuffs with a board in between. It was insane. And so hours later, I got to call my lawyer and my husband. And my husband is the one who tells me, yeah, the White House, they released a doctored photo of you. I said, what?
That's crazy.
And he's like, yeah, looking like you were crying. And my husband was there when I got arrested. So he knew what and he documented it. So that's how my real arrest video got out. And at the time when everything was going on, I asked the FBI agent, why are you recording me? That just seemed weird. You sitting here finna arrest somebody and you got a cell phone and you're recording me being arrested. And I said, why are you recording me? I don't want to be a trophy for MAGA. And he's like, it's not going to end up on Twitter or anything. They just asked me to document. And of course they lied, because that image, the White House put out this doctored image of me. And then the New York Times wound up running an article where they talked about my experience and how this is a new low, you know, for the White House to do something like this. But it is also an escalation of the misuse of artificial intelligence. And if this is coming from the White House, can you trust anything coming from your government?
And that's the New York Times saying that. The New York Times saying that. We know what we say here at Black Power Media. I want to ask you, I mean, I know you got to run, but I want to ask you this because of the fact that there are people that are checking us out right now. And, you know, you're talking about how you had to go to a hotel room, FBI bum rushes your friend, you know what I mean? They come back, they attack your husband, attack the lawyer, and they attempt to attack you, chain you up, shackle you up, lock you up, so on and so forth. We've heard from mainstream media their account of the whole church situation. You know what I mean? So all of this is stemming from that. If you could, with what you could do legally, if you could tell us what exactly happened, because of the fact that it seems far-fetched playing crackers advocate.
It is far-fetched.
Yeah.
Even if you play their advocate, it's far-fetched what they have done.
I mean, they did y'all worse than Dylan Roof. Dylan Roof came in and shot it up and left with some Burger King. So I mean, tell us what happened with this whole church thing, because of the fact that we had just had Georgia on one of our shows a couple of weeks prior. She was talking about the whole ICE situation. And then all of a sudden, she's getting locked up. We send the videos, so on and so forth. And also let us know all of your arrests happened after Fort in Lemon, correct?
No.
Or this was before that?
No, my arrest happened first. I was the first person arrested.
Okay.
So yeah, I was the first person who was arrested.
Forgive me, I'm getting old. Don't trip.
So like I said, there were 39 of us, in total. They just indicted 30 people. Like first it was 3 of us, then it was 6, and that's what included Georgia and Don Lemon and a few other people. And then they came for the other 30 within the last couple weeks. And so that's how we know, it's 39 people who were on the indictment. But in terms of what happened, so the ACLU filed a lawsuit against ICE, and the federal government because of Operation Metro Surge. For those who don't know, it's where the federal government deployed the largest number of ICE agents in U.S. history to Minnesota. Thousands, over 3,000 federal agents came here. And they were very violent and brutal, kicking down doors, dragging people out of their homes. I mean, as a matter of fact, at least 3 of the people who wound up being arrested from the church protest had their doors kicked in. One guy had his, they got in front and behind his vehicle and smacked his car. I mean, just violence. But they were doing this to immigrants or suspected immigrants, kicking down people's doors, showing up with long guns, they cut a disabled woman out of her seatbelt and dragged her out of the car. I mean, it's just so many horrific stories that happened because of ICE. So the ACLU filed a lawsuit, and they talked about in the lawsuit how ICE was retaliating against nonviolent protesters, by shooting them with rubber bullets and tear gassing them and stuff like that. And they filed this lawsuit on behalf of 6 residents. So one of the people who responded to the lawsuit was a man named David Easterwood, who is a pastor at City's Church, which is the church where the protest was held. But he also is the regional director of ICE in Minnesota and in 3 or 4 surrounding states. And in that lawsuit, he said that there was no evidence that ICE was violating people's constitutional rights. And he said that it was the fault of protesters. They're the ones that are aggressive. So on that Saturday, I find this out. The Saturday the 17th is Dr. King's weekend at this point. So I find out that this happens, reach out to a few people and talk to them about us doing Operation Pull Up, which is one of our protest strategies that we've done in the past related to police accountability, where you might pull up at somebody's house, like an elected official or a law enforcement, and you have a peaceful protest outside. And so with Operation Pull Up, the people don't necessarily know where we're going. You show up at one location, and then you get instructions on where the next location is. And you're not told, why are we, going here for this person until you get there, so that it doesn't leak, right? So that, because sometimes the media will show up when they see a protest call, and you want to just be able to go, and handle your business. And so with Operation Pull Up, I put a flyer up, and it said, ICE out Minnesota. So people knew it was related to something with us, taking on ICE. And it said, if you want to participate, show up at the Cub Foods parking lot, which is like a grocery store parking lot, at this time, and then from there, we would go to the second location. So on that Saturday, after I put the flyer out, a few hours later, somebody contacted me saying, Don Lemon is planning to come to Minnesota tomorrow. He wants to know if he can show up and document, this Operation Pull Up, protest. And I was like, he'll get the information the same time as everybody else. And I first asked the person, like, did you invite Don? Because normally we don't have national media coming to this. And they like, no, he had the flyer. So then Don contacted me. We talked briefly. And I said, you have to get the information. I wouldn't even give Georgia the information, right? And Georgia has covered so many of our protests over the years. And I said, you guys have to show up at Cub Foods like everybody else. And so people showed up at Cub Foods. Apparently it was 39 of us, because I didn't know all the people, you know, or their names or anything. I knew some people, but many of them I didn't know. And so in the parking lot of Cub Foods, I said, you know, who's done Operation Pull Up before? Most people had not. And I explained the history and some of the other successes of Operation Pull Up. And I said, so I'm going to give you guys the address, but I'm not going to tell you where we're going. And I'm like, so you got to show up, you know, and I'm like, one guy had on this F Trump hat and another hat that had, and I was like, if you were wearing like overtly protest stuff, like you got to cover it up. Cause I didn't want, you know, it to be obvious. Like, so I'm like, just, you know, cover up and come in with us. I was like, you know, I told white people, you know, if you're white, you want to go in to the first wave of people, go ahead, just take a seat when you get there. And then I said, for us as people of color, we'll go in the second wave. Because I just assumed with a primarily white church that they wouldn't be used to seeing Black people in there. And so people pulled up. They didn't know exactly, you know, what it was, but they walked in, everybody sat down, including me when I came in. We sat down, we participated in the worship service like normal. And during the worship service, and now let me help people understand too, this is a Southern Baptist church in St. Paul, Minnesota. Understanding the history of Southern Baptists, there's a Baptist convention. The Southern Baptists split from the Northern Baptists in 1845 over the dispute of slavery. The Southern Baptists wanted to maintain slavery. The Northern Baptists did not. They split. That's how you got the Southern Baptists. So this is a Southern Baptist church in St. Paul. And one of their pastors is the director of ICE, who, like I said, was a part of responding to that lawsuit, defending the conduct of ICE agents. And so we go in, we're sitting in the service. And mind you, in addition to being a lawyer, I am an ordained reverend. I've been an ordained reverend since 2016. I've been a preacher since 2007, right? So I'm very much a woman of faith, and my faith informs my activism. So the pastor, when we're sitting in the service, he prays. Part of his prayer is, please chasten us, O Lord, and help us to get our house in order. And then he finishes his prayer and he says, amen. After he says amen, I stood up from the back of the church and I started walking towards him. And I said, excuse me, Pastor, did you just pray, please chasten us, O Lord, and help us to get our house in order? And he said, correct. And I said, well, help me understand, how is David Easterwood a pastor here, but also serving as the director of ICE in St. Paul? And it was an honest question. And as soon as I said the name David Easterwood, the pastor starts going, shame, shame, like over the microphone. I'm like, shame, like y'all should be ashamed. But after I realized he didn't want to have this conversation, so I just started chanting justice for Renee Good, because Renee Good had been killed on January 7th. This was January 18th by this point. No arrests, nothing. So I started chanting justice for Renee Good. Then the rest of the protesters stood up and joined me. That wasn't planned. They had no idea. They didn't even know they were going into a church. And so I started saying justice for Renee Good. And they joined me in that section of the church where we started chanting justice for Renee Good. And then our second chant that I led was hands up, don't shoot. And that was, in my opinion, I'm thinking, I don't know if there's ICE agents in this audience. I don't want them to think that we're a threat, you know, and do whatever. So hands up, don't shoot. So that became our second chant. Then we did other chants like ICE out of Minnesota, you know, things like that. And as this demonstration is going on, you have some people who got up and walked out of the church. You have the church blaring music loud so that people can't hear what we're saying. You have some people sitting in the pews praying. You have some people standing up worshiping the Lord. You have some people having conversations with protesters, trying to understand why we're there, who's David Easterwood, what's going on, like lengthy dialogues during this time. And all of this is happening simultaneously. And then you have Georgia and Don Lemon and another independent journalist documenting. So as you saw, Don Lemon was actually going around interviewing people. He interviewed me. He interviewed some of the parishioners as a part of his coverage. in Georgia, came up with the mic, I think once or twice in the midst of this. And so once we wrapped up our chanting, we walked out peacefully as a group and exited the church. And then we went out front, like on the side. We talked as a group, did a couple more chants. They had called the police on us. The police stayed outside in their cars. They did not say anything to us. They didn't bother us because it was a peaceful protest, right? As a Christian woman, I am confronting what I see as hypocrisy happening in a church. That is a part of the Christian tradition. So for the federal government to try to criminalize a nonviolent church and to use the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871 as one of the two charges against us shows you what this is really about. And like I said, the fact that they have not held a single federal or ICE agent accountable when they have killed people. Because I got arrested on January 22nd. Alex Preddy, an American citizen, was killed on January 24th, just 2 days later, out in the open, shot in cold blood. The federal government got those federal agents out of the state of Minnesota. And to this day, none of them have been held accountable. So all 39 of us are facing two charges, one under the FACE Act, which is supposed to be an act that's focused on preventing protesters from stopping people from going in abortion clinics. And then there's also a part of the act that deals with houses of worship, but it's really focused on violence, and interference with worship. And then the second one is a conspiracy act under the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871. So that's what they're being charged with.
These are felony charges or misdemeanors? Yeah,
these are felony charges that we are fighting, all 39 of us.
So how can you woo, man, I mean,
it's a lot.
You've had an exciting couple months. Between
but this is also the story. Like, if you knew more about my activism,
man,
like this isn't the first time I have faced charges for activism, right? This is the first federal, but in January of 2015, I was one of 11 people who was charged for a demonstration at the Mall of America that we held in December of 2014, calling out police violence. And this was peaceful, over 3,000 people. But they decided 11 of us were organizers. And I was one of two people with the most charges. I was charged with 8 misdemeanors. And at this time, I was a law professor, right? So they were trying to come for my whole situation as a mom. And I'm like, oh, no. So I fought those charges along with the other people for 11 months. And then our charges were dismissed in November of 2015 by the same judge, Judge Cahill, who oversaw the Derek Chauvin trial.
So they got you. I mean, you got the White House making memes about you, the pastor dipping in the coffers, you got the church mad at you. I mean, man, I thought I was bad. You know what I'm saying? You making me look like a good guy. Now,
I'm good in the sense of standing up for justice and speaking the truth, and doing it in the name of the Lord. I come in the name of the Most High God, whether they want to accept that or they don't. I'm standing on business for God and for our people, and for justice and for the most vulnerable.
No doubt. And we with it. Shout out to our in-house Reverend here on the platform, Kiana Jones, who's in the chat right now, our sister. But I mean, definitely, man, whoo, it's so many angles right now.
It's a lot, but it also, it's a part of the process, because as a woman of faith, right, the Bible talks about being willing to give up your life, right? And that's the comforts, that's all the safety nets, that's the things that we think are important. But at the end of the day, when it comes to me staying safe and comfortable versus living out the meaning of the gospel, loving the Lord my God with all my heart, mind, soul, and strength, and loving my neighbor as I love myself, that's what I'm going to choose. An empire will always punish those who take that route, just like they did Jesus. It was the government, it was law enforcement, and it was the church that sent Jesus to the cross.
Let us remember that. Pontius Pilate, the Roman soldiers still exist.
And the Pharisees and the Sadducees, as we're seeing right here today.
All day. And I salute you because that's the whole thing, right? We talk about religion, and oftentimes we say we're gonna put it in the Lord's hand. You know what I'm saying? You have to be active. You have to then we're gonna respect how you get down. King was a Christian, but he was active. We just left Selma a few days ago, you know what I'm saying, for the Bloody Sunday. We hosted some joints out there, and it's about being active. And so we salute you for that. Two things. One, we want to know how we can support your case for the viewers and whatnot. What can we do around that? Number one. But number two, for Lowdown Lenny, WWJD, what would Jamal do with his slick ass? How do we continue to combat this nonsense, because of the fact that there's so much mispropaganda, and we're not going to let Tamika Mallory or Nina off the hook either, because of the fact that if you all involved, then you're dead wrong. If what Nekima Levy Armstrong saying is true, then y'all dead wrong. It's some Negro shit you on. In fact, we saw the video that Georgia Fort put together with Jamal Bryant at the end, giving you credit for starting this, and then he turns around talking about he canceling it. See, this is, I can't even say what I want to say.
The evidence is out there, the receipts are out there. If people want to do the digging, they can go back and see. That's just the bottom line. So I would say
that's what he said.
They can go look for themselves. Before my computer dies, because I see that I'm like low battery.
Good.
But before that happens, I'll say, so our hashtag around the those of us who were charged in the city's church protest, we're the Righteous 39. So when you see stuff come out, because we have a rally before different court appearances, we ask people to show up and do court support. But as you see articles or us posting, share those things, comment on those things, pray for us, because we're fighting these charges. They're unjust charges. I mean, how does our president have 34 felonies, and I spent more time in jail than he did when I spent one night in jail for this city's protest church, the city's church protest? How is that? 34 felonies? Come on.
That's crazy.
So Righteous 39. And then, and they, I'm on Instagram at Nekima L. And then in terms of the Target boycott, keep the boycott going. The boycott is not over. One person does not have the power to stop a movement of the people. And it is working. And I'm proud of our people for seeing through the smoke screen and pushing back very strongly and calling out Jamal Bryant and the other people who are involved in trying to stop this powerful movement that we have going on. Because trust me, if it wasn't working, nobody would be giving it this much attention. So that should let people know we are on to something here, and we need to keep going. This is the longest running boycott, economic boycott in a very long time. It's also one of the most successful economic boycotts in U.S. history. And to know that it is Black-led and particularly Black women-led is something that we should be proud of. But our people also know, we all felt it in our spirits, we can't let Target off the hook. No doubt. They got to be held accountable. And some people ain't never going back, like they said, and I do not blame them. Target has disrespected us so much and taken us for granted. They don't deserve our dollars.
Without a doubt. Nekima, we appreciate you coming on today. You got my head spinning. I feel like Will Smith's daughter whipping my hair back and forth. You know what I mean? But we gonna win. And beyond the boycott, no shopping at Target. That's the end. We don't care what Jamal Bryant's saying. In fact, boycott New Birth too, as long as he's the pastor. How about that? You know what I mean? Because
somebody got to hold the line. I'm not going to, I'm not going to organize and go. Hey, I'm still dealing with city church.
You don't have to. I'm a no good heathen, so I can get away with it. But anyway, check it out.
Thank you for having me and just allowing me to unpack all of this. Hopefully, it provided clarity for people. You know, everybody may not agree, but the truth is the truth, whether people want to hear it or they don't. You know, it just gives you something to think about and another layer to unpack in all of this. Use your own discernment, right, to figure out where you stand.
No doubt. Stay on point, stay safe out there, because, whoo, I mean, they was doing memes about me, but I don't think the White House did any memes of me yet. But I'm gonna let you get that one. But anyway, be safe out there, keep winning. We'll see you soon. You know what I mean? Stay on point.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
No doubt. You're checking out RSTV. That was Nekima Levy Armstrong putting in work out in Minnesota. You know what I mean? And we're gonna definitely continue to hold her in our hearts and prayers and thoughts and all that stuff. And continue to support those out there who are fighters. Folks like Jamal Bryant, I know, some of his parishioners may be checking us out, whatnot. Wrong is wrong. As my grandmother used to say, right ain't gonna wrong nobody. You know what I mean? Make sure you continue to support Black Power Media. We have our first all French show on the platform. Our brother Fernando, Vital Hoops, he's on his second season, and he just launched his first all French show. Of course, this is an international podcast, so we want to make sure that we continue to bring on different languages and represent African culture home and abroad. Y'all be safe out there. Support Black Power Media. Again, it's a viewer-funded platform. We don't take corporate sponsorship, none of that. We don't take no corporate money. Target can't drop no dollars on us. We ain't having it, you know what I'm saying? But you could keep us on the air by donating to blackpowermedia.org/donate. That's blackpowermedia.org/donate. Till next time, y'all stay on the right side of the barricades. Stay safe out there. We winning. RSTV, Black Power Media, we out.
Ancestor, ancestor, take my hand. Ancestor, lead me on. Ancestor, let me stand. Ancestor, I get tired. Ancestor, I get weak. I get weak. Knows I get warm. Ancestor, through the storm. Ancestor, through the night. Ancestor, lead me on. Ancestor, through the light. Ancestor, take my hand. Ancestors, and lead me on. In my way grows drift. Ancestors, please linger near. When my life is almost gone, hear my cry, hear my call. Take my hand, let's not fall. Take my hand, ancestors, and lead me on. Hear my cry, hear my call. Take my hand, let's not fall. Take my hand, ancestors, and lead me on.
Familo Wosoke, Kilik Belga. I am that which walks with you through the torrential rains of life without getting wet. I am that which walks with you through the firestorm within, yet fire cannot burn me. I am that which walks with you through the winds of transformation, yet cannot be uprooted. I am the memory whose shoulders you stand on when feet plant on earth. I am the head that came before a book. I am the you in that mirror that you look. Say my name. I am ancestor. I am a Gungun. Ashe.
Egum, Mojuba, Egum, Mojuba, Egum, Mojuba. Hear my cry, hear my call. Take my hand, lest I fall. Take my hand, ancestors, and lead me on. Ancestor, you are breath, you are bridge. You carry us over tumultuous time. You who can hear and answer with quick remedy, you are ready before we ask. You who can speak through tongues of trees and fire and water, this earth cannot hold you. We pound the ground and you appear, O ancient ones. You who can make lightning strike with the flick of a skirt. You who can make tornado turn with the spin and span of hips, take us there, to the place of knowing, to the hall that leads to the doorway of you, O holy ones. You of the first light, you who know the potential of possibility pulsing in the dark, deliver us unto our gifts. You who have sunlight in your fingertips, oh touch our drums, make us hear the rising, make us move a steady stump, a choir of voices so majestic, heaven hides us in a tapestry of light, oh we are stars, blankets of wonder, sky bright eyes seeing the invisible, visible. You who have returned, you have turned our faces so that we see ourselves, and we have found you again in places we would have never imagined. You make our limits infinitely long, our visions clearer with eyes closed, and even there you still stand in full color, vibrant and eager to serve. Hear my cry, hear my call, take my hand, lest I fall. Take my hand, ancestors, and lead